All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today is an exciting episode because I have Belinda from the Ritual Herb Bar here to talk to us all about how we can support our little ones to have healthier immune systems and just be generally healthier and more resilient in this day and age where it isn't necessarily very easy to do so. So thank you so much for coming on, Belinda.
Thanks for having me.
So before we begin, I'd love if you could tell us one thing that you've done today to nourish yourself, so to take care of yourself. And I know it's early in the morning, so there may not have been too many things. But
What have I done? Not a lot, to be honest, probably this morning, but I did get ready properly, which I don't normally necessarily do. So I did wash and dry my hair. So I do actually, which for me, that is, feels nurturing because I feel better for the rest of the day. If I'm not ready properly, I do feel, you feel a bit off for the whole day.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And it is only 9:30 in the morning. So there's not too much we could have done by this point. And I would love, before we get into this topic as well, if you could share just a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yep. Okay. So I'm a naturopath. I've also studied nutritional medicine. I have a clinic in Brisbane, which is my own clinic that I consult from, and also where I produce a range of herbal products that I sell. I have a husband, 2 little boys. One is nearly 8 and one is nearly 6. And I've lived in Brisbane for a couple of years now, but my husband's in the army, so we've moved around a little bit. Since the kid's been born, we've probably lived in 5 different cities so far. But we're settled here a little bit now. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a bit of moving. I moved quite a bit as well. We've been settled here for 6 years now, but before that we were moving all around to different spots. And that was because my husband studied medicine and just for the adventure too. But it seemed like it was us and people who were in the army that were on this similar path of moving quite often. Not too many other professions require that, do they?
No, not really. And obviously when we move, we come across families, because they're army families, and you move to a new place and you're often in a similar street and stuff like that where the housing is and all that. So you meet new people. But yeah, definitely anyone who doesn't have anything to do with that kind of life is pretty, shocked at the idea that you would be just moving all across the country, it doesn't happen usually.
No, it doesn't. So let's get into talking about this a little bit, talking about the chronic disease that our kids face and all the other issues that are seeming so prevalent nowadays. I'm wondering from your perspective, why do you think we are seeing kids with chronic diseases, skin issues, atopic conditions, and mental health struggles? It just seems like there's so much that our kids are challenged with health-wise. Why do you think that is?
It's obviously a massive topic, but I think, if you're looking at it from a broader sort of picture, we are just not living in alignment with the way humans are meant to live, really, in any way, when it comes to food, when it comes to lifestyle, just everything, environment, things we're exposed to, but, just everything is different to the way really we should live. And it's obviously we can't escape from that, maybe you can somewhat in little different ways, but you can't escape from that. So you need to find ways to be able to live, from my point of view, live, in that lifestyle, in this lifestyle, and not be trying to escape it, but bring those other parts back into how we should be living in some other way. Because there's gut health, there's exposure to chemicals and all this other stuff, but there's so many different things yeah, we've just got to find ways to integrate that more natural way that we should be living into this modern lifestyle.
It's such a challenge, isn't it? We're faced with so much with we have this way of living now that is convenient in one sense, but it's just really moved us so far away from how we're meant to live as humans. And yeah, we're struggling health wise as adults and as kids and our kids too
Yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
it's everybody. Yeah, it's definitely everyone, but I guess also I guess the last 10 or 20 years, 10 years especially maybe, but a little bit longer as well. It's come so much further in that direction in so many ways that you or I, for example, did have the first 20 years of our life a little bit more skewed towards that, like not as, we didn't have the phones, and you didn't have, access to all of this different food, and not as much medication probably in general and stuff like that. Whereas now kids are just born, it just starts bang, day one, or before actually, during pregnancy. But yeah, from day one, that's it, it all begins. So it's harder now for them than it even was for us, for sure.
Yeah, it's so true. It's something that has been impacting us for a couple generations, but it's suddenly really amplified. And yeah, kids now are being born and there's plastic in their system already, right? And it's mind blowing, but I guess it does make sense when you think about how we are living and the products that we're surrounded by and the industry and everything. So yeah, it's a real challenge. So what are some of the things that you do and you recommend for parents that you work with to help support health despite this? Because yeah, we can't change how we live completely. And even if we go live off grid somewhere and have our own garden, we're still impacted by some of the chemicals in the riverways and various things, and in the building materials. Like we can't escape it completely and live a toxin-free life or anything. That is totally unrealistic, unfortunately. So what do you do? Like, what do you recommend that people can do to support their kids' health despite the modern world and the way we live?
Yeah. So, like the first thing I would say, there's so many little things you can do. It's almost a matter of, just tick off little boxes one at a time, as well. Like, because when you're looking at it as a whole, stress is the one thing that you don't want more of. There is so much of that. You can also, for myself, but also with clients, I always just one thing at a time. It doesn't have to be everything. You don't have to change everything. You don't have to move away. You don't have to, do all that, because what all that does is create stress. If your kids all of a sudden, okay, we don't do this, we don't eat this, you can't eat at a party, you can't, all of that stuff, all that does is create stress. Stress is, a major negative impact on health. There is already enough of that. We certainly don't need to make just the mere act of eating a major stress, as well. Because, stress itself impacts the digestion of foods by, studies say it's up to about 70%. If you're stressed during a mealtime, and you know how easy that is with kids, sit down, sit in your chair, just eat it, I've made it, like all of that stuff. Kids don't want to eat, they're walking around, they're fighting, but whatever it is already a stressful experience for a lot of families a lot of the time. And that one thing itself has a major impact on digestion. Then you're not digesting your foods, your kids aren't, you're not absorbing the nutrients from them, so that alone, my first thing is just one thing at a time.
I love that.
And then I'm going off track a bit.
No, I think that's brilliant, because I think that's such an important thing, that there's lots of things we can change, but we have to preface it with like taking it slow, right? Taking that one thing off at a time, so we aren't creating that stress. And yeah, that I know that it doesn't help anything. And you're right, there's already so much stress that we're already feeling and our kids are feeling, that if we can
Yeah.
try and do this in a way that is more fun and not adding to the stress, I think that's so important. So that's a great starting spot.
Yeah. And then as far as, because I can't really underestimate the impact of like we were talking about with plastics in the, they're already there before babies are born, in the cord blood and everything. I just, even though the information out there doesn't really give us exactly what impact that's going to have, we don't know, and I probably won't know. We probably won't ever know exactly the impact of that, but I think it's probably massive, overall, from my point of view, on hormonal health, on everything, but on hormones. I mean, what isn't impacted by hormones in our bodies? Everything is in some way. So if they're being altered by exposure to all these, and like you said, you can't get away from building materials, carpet, you have to be able to buy things from a shop and live, but if you just do the basic things like filter your water, which contains heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, plastics, so much stuff. Just filter your water, for you can get your water filters that filter the whole house and all that sort of stuff, great, but you can also get a $300 ceramic water filter that will last you, forever, kind of thing, that filters all that stuff out of your water. It's just a simple kind of thing that makes such a big difference, and it doesn't change. It's not harder for you. So it's all, I think personally, it's about starting with things that don't make your life harder, like changing the whole diet and all that sort of stuff necessarily. Filter your water, change your kids' plastic water bottles to stainless steel or something. Obviously glass is not much good for kids, so that's not a good swap. But get all those squeezy bottles and that the kids are drinking out of, when the water heats up in those in the car or at school or something else, and then the plastic leaching into their water and they're drinking that every day. That's not a hard swap. You just buy a new stainless steel water bottle, just little things like that, that aren't harder for you, that can make a big difference. Mind you, in saying that, that's sort of a long-term strategy as well. If your child does have eczema or, ADHD or, whatever it might be, all the things that I see a lot of, doing that isn't going to, they're not going to be better in a month. So there's obviously things that need to change, if there is an actual health condition happening.
But I like that. Those are some of the long-term things that can set our kids up, because we want our kids to thrive in the moment, but we also want to set them up to have a healthy lifestyle long-term, right? So I think that, if we can reduce the exposure they have to plastics and filtering water, I think those are such doable swaps that can get us motivated to then start making other changes as well, and know that that's setting up the whole family to have better health in the long term.
Yeah.
What are some things that you would suggest people do to make little shifts to have impact in the more short term with these type of challenges, if it's eczema or ADHD or just struggling with getting sick often? Or
and so ADHD is one of the, I don't diagnose conditions, obviously, so people will come, often anyone that comes to see me has normally gone on it, they've already been on a long journey of seeing, first a GP, then a specialist, then someone else, and they haven't got a good result, and then they come and see me. So that's generally how it works. And even as far as kids go, I do see a lot of kids, but it's often mums that I already see, and then they realise, like they'll say, whatever, my son, he's been having this, so they sort of they didn't intend to take the kids down that road, or even think that the problems that they had with their kids might be something that you can do about, because often that's not what they're told. I mean, never that's what they're told. Anyone that I see, they're all told, this is what your kid has, here's the medication, there you go. That's you from now on, kind of thing. There is really no information or instruction on improving it long term, or even necessarily ever coming off medication or anything. They're just sent on their way, and that's probably a good scenario. Often it's just oh no, seems fine, off you go type thing.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're already very frustrated, questioning themselves as well. You know, is it, what is this, me just thinking this? Is it really something? Or, you know, all of that sort of stuff as well, which is very stressful for people and frustrating. So, and then there's the other, you know, I've even forgotten your original question, but I was just going to go down this.
No, this is great. I think this
ADHD.
is a really important topic to talk about.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I've seen more, like, had the mum saying more, oh yeah, my, just, you know, like I said, they haven't brought their kids in necessarily. Oh yeah, my son has ADHD too. And you know, the medication used for that then, you know, suppresses appetite and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So there's an initial issue, but it doesn't, you don't take your medication and then everyone's fine. There's always, you know, if the medication is working, and I'm certainly not against taking any medication, or that's not the road I'm going down, you know, sometimes it's necessary. But the problem can be that, you know, if you even just do a quick Google search and look at the, you know, criteria for diagnosing ADHD, for example, and then look at the, you know, then Google symptoms of high copper, or pyrrole disorder, or sensitivity to, you know, colors or preservatives. They're all the same. You know, you'll find the exact same list for ADHD as you'll find for quite a few other things. So I do find, and this is maybe like kind of a controversial thing to say, in that it's because it's helpful sometimes for people to get a diagnosis of something, because they've gone through such a process that they think, what is wrong? You know, what's happening? Someone tell me what's happening. That when they're told, yes, your son has or daughter has XYZ, it's almost a relief sometimes, because it's confirmation that, okay, like, I wasn't crazy, they do have something. But that is also just a list of symptoms that we've given a name to. It doesn't tell you why they're having those symptoms at all. It doesn't tell. So are they sensitive? Are they just sensitive to, because for not everyone, of course, not everyone, so everybody's different, but for some people, you remove those preservatives and chemicals and colors and everything else from their food, and they don't have ADHD anymore. So okay, we've given it a name, but what they actually had is a sensitivity to chemicals in their food. Or you get a, you know, hair test or a blood test, and what they actually have is really high copper and really low zinc, and you need to find out why that is. So often the diagnosis is just, it's saying, yes, you have something, but it doesn't give you any information about why you have it. There is always a reason, whether it's, you know, too much of something, too little of something as far as nutrients go, or sensitivity to something, or food intolerance, or parasites, or just, you know, dysbiosis in general, or whatever it might be. There's a reason. So even if it's, you know, I guess anything, you know, anemia, okay, you've got low iron. You don't just have low iron. Why do you have low iron? So you've been given an answer, but just taking iron doesn't fix your problem. That's why you know, I have people come in that have low iron forever. They've been having the same thing for 20 years, because you take some iron, you stop, and it comes back down because you haven't done anything about the cause of it. So whether it's kids, adults, whoever, there's always a reason for it, you know, often more than one reason, which is why it can get complicated, kind of thing. but also kids tend to respond very well because they're young, they're younger, their bodies are still, they don't have decades of, stuff that they've done to their bodies like we have or whatever. They do also tend to respond pretty well. So it's like for me, I find it sad, actually, frustrating, but also just sad that no one is aware, no one's told that there's a solution to this stuff. There's a reason it's happening. Yes, you haven't found the reason yet, but there is a reason. And someone, naturopath or an integrative doctor or whatever, can actually help you find it instead of just saying, here you go, here's your tablets, that's what you have, see you later. Which is not, from my point of view, it's just not an answer. It's unfair. It doesn't generally get a good result anyway. It should be a temporary thing while the underlying cause is being worked on. So you can go on to thrive, not just get by for the rest of your life on your medication and sort of feel okay so long as you keep taking it, when kids can feel good, they don't have to have these things. There's always an answer. And it's just sad that that's not common knowledge. Everyone just sort of thinks, okay, well, there we go, that's what we have, and that's our lot in life.
Yeah, there is so much that we can do, isn't there, if we just look a bit deeper. But there isn't that education, and it's not normal to for people to be aware that there is root cause issues, and it is just covering up some of the symptoms, but the kids will continue to struggle with other aspects of that, right?
Yeah. And you see it all the time, as in, you've got, or they call it the atopic march, I think, where you start with, and every single time I see it, let's say an 8-year-old or something, and he now has asthma. Did you have eczema? Yes. Did you have colic? Yes. Did you? It just happens. If you don't get to the bottom, it's all so, and always, it's always, oh yeah, we had that and grew out of it. Oh yeah, we had that but grew out of it. No one's growing out of it. You stop having those symptoms and they change to something else because the original cause wasn't dealt with. They're still all atopic conditions. And they still all essentially, obviously, again, everybody's different. There's always different reasons, but there's inflammation. There's nearly always a lot of inflammation. There's nearly always poor digestion in some way. So often it's, some form of dysbiosis. There's always all that underlying stuff is very similar for all of those kids. And if you started initially when you first saw the eczema or the colic or the whatever, and corrected that bit of dysbiosis, because remember, you're getting, also there's cesarean and, all that as well. But even with natural birth, the microbiome of the mother is probably not, given our lifestyle and everything, is probably not great anyway. And then that's what the baby gets, and then all the other lifestyle factors straight away, So there wouldn't be too many babies being born without some form, of dysbiosis anyway. But if you, even colic, for example, I mean, there's plenty. I think it's 1 in 4 kids or something like that is the kind of, estimate of how many kids have colic. And it's basically just, okay, yeah, they'll grow out of that. But generally, again, there's different reasons, but generally, so about 90% of the bacteria in a baby's, for babies is bifidobacteria, because they feed, and, it's all, obviously there's a lot to it, but the oligosaccharides in the breast milk fuel that bacteria, which is kind of thought of as the reason why that's the dominant bacteria, and, all that sort of stuff. But with colicky babies, they also find that there's a really low rate of lactobacillobacteria. So when you have dysbiosis of some kind, they can produce, those bacteria produce gas. And then especially with a small little baby, that gas is then stretching the intestinal wall, creating pain, wind, and all of that sort of stuff. And then the baby cries and cries and cries and cries and cries because it's in pain, and then when you feed, or when it, passes wind or whatever, you get some relief and all of that stuff, and let's just wait it out and it'll go away. But if all you do is, either the mother and or baby, provide some support then initially in those first few weeks of changing that bacteria a little bit with a probiotic or whatever needs to be done, and then providing some relief herbally by massaging, antispasmodics like chamomile or fennel or peppermint or, whatever oil into the baby's tummy. The mother if she's breastfeeding, drinking chamomile tea, you can relieve that. I would say from what I see, you can relieve it 80% of the time without changing anything else, but no one's told to try anything like that necessarily. So we just wait it out. You spend the first 3-4 months of your baby's life absolutely going insane because you can't sleep, the baby doesn't sleep, everyone's unhappy, all of that stuff. When just such simple little things like that can make such a difference. And then what do you potentially avoid when that is initially dealt with? You potentially then avoid a bit of eczema, and then, the carry on, what carries on from there. But it's just not the way it's done. And people just cop it and just have to deal with it,
Yeah, it's just seen as normal, right? That some babies are like that, and that's that. Yeah.
And obviously, as I say, there is always exceptions to the rule, and, sometimes that's not enough. And, if the mother's eating certain foods, it's passing through the breast milk, or there's bottle feeding and all these other things, there's other, factors and everything. But yeah, I would say from what I've personally seen anyway, the majority, if it's not completely relieved, it is 50%, 80%, 90% better, and then you can deal with it. Like, you can deal with some crying and it's all okay, but it can be really bad. And just doing those couple of simple things could make it so much easier and prevent so many future issues. But it's just not the way it is. It's not the way it's done.
But that's such important information for parents to know, so they can make those small tweaks early on to have such huge impact initially, but also in the long term. I love that. So, because that's when they are younger, they do respond more quickly to different inputs, right?
Yeah. And that's not to say that, if now your kids are older and you didn't know that and you didn't do that, and now you're in you're already down that kind of track, it doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it. But for anyone that does have a younger baby, the prevention is always easier, or very early treatment, is always easier and quicker than if you get further down the track, obviously. But even kids respond well to, even with, eczema is so common, but that's what any skin issues are gut related. I'm yet to see a skin issue that doesn't have a component, at least, a large component is there's some issue with the gut. If someone comes in with a skin issue, whether a kid or an adult, I'm yet to have someone not say, oh yeah, also I'm constipated. Oh yeah, also I'm bloated all the time. Oh yeah, also, and often, not always, but often, I don't do anything for the skin. I don't put anything on the skin at all, recommend anything necessarily for the skin. Once you sort out the other stuff that they didn't necessarily think was the problem, the skin just clears up on its own. So the skin isn't necessarily the issue. It's as I said, there's always a cause. That's just a symptom. That's your body telling you, excuse me, look, something is wrong. can you please do something about it? And we go, shh, okay, shush, put a cream on it. Don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. And we just do that forever. And then, like, then our body responds accordingly. It's always trying to get back to where it wants to be. It wants you to feel well. So it will continue to try to do that, but we just suppress it until, then you have chronic disease, which is what everyone kind of has.
Yeah. So for the skin conditions, like if it is eczema or other rashes and things that come up, what are some of the things that we can do to support the gut to help with that?
Okay, so everyone is always different, but the few things you want to be looking at, so what you would do about them may depend, because it depends. Is there a parasite? So you want to be looking at what is happening. So is there a parasite? Is there a food intolerance? In saying that, that's still not necessarily the cause. So if you have a parasite, lots of people have parasites, and if you have a good gut terrain, as in if the gut environment is healthy, you can have parasites and you get no symptoms whatsoever. Obviously, there's lots of different parasites and all that. So this is just obviously just a very general conversation. Mm-hmm. But you can have no symptoms whatsoever because the gut environment is good and they don't have a chance to, take over and sort of cause a problem. When the gut environment is not good or not as it should be, then the opportunistic sort of parasites, bacteria and all that have a chance to do what they want to do because they don't have the competition from all that good bacteria and, strong gut wall and all of that stuff. There's a lot of inflammation in there. Then you get problems. So you could have a parasite, or you could have, even food intolerances. Obviously, an allergy is a different thing again. Food intolerance, which, you generally find, like the common ones are, gluten, dairy, that sort of stuff. They're your main ones. But when you improve that gut environment, you'll generally find that you can eat those foods again. Obviously, you don't want to go back doing what you were doing and you end up back in that same place. But, some kids, the second they have a piece of bread or whatever, they have some kind of flare up. Once you strengthen that gut environment and improve the microbiome and all that sort of stuff, you can have a piece of bread, no issues whatsoever. Because it's the gaps in the gut wall, if you've got that, so what you might know is like sort of leaky gut, which is just basically though, part of it is just, the cells of the wall of the gut should be nice and tight and, only let nutrients and water and, seep through and into the bloodstream and all that sort of stuff. When you have a lot of inflammation and all that sort of stuff, you have big gaps all the time that proteins can seep through and all that sort of stuff, and they get into bloodstream and cause problems. They're not meant to be able to do that. So you've got your proteins from your gluten and your dairy and all that sort of stuff seeping through that inflamed, messy gut wall, causing problems. When you fix that and the gut wall's nice and tight and you've got the right bacteria, good balance of bacteria in there and all that sort of stuff, and you don't have those problems necessarily anymore. And you can eat a pretty broad, healthy, broad diet without having to cut out a whole heap of stuff. So it's not, I think a lot of people often think, oh yeah, you go and see, someone and next second you're like, you can't have, you gluten-free, you dairy-free, you this free, you can't even live anymore. But it's not real. To be honest, I rarely, if I tell people to stop eating entire food groups, it's for a period of time to allow healing. And then generally you should be able to have them again. Again, depends on the person. An allergy is a completely different thing and all of that. But, generally you should be able to eat all those foods and not have a problem when that gut terrain and environment is good. So, so when you're talking about eczema or something like that, you want to make sure that the fatty acids, you've got a good fatty acid content. So I'll often give kids like a good omega-3 supplement when they have eczema. It helps bring down the inflammation and hydrate the skin and all that sort of stuff as well. But you still will often see that poor absorption of nutrients in an unhealthy gut. So they're not absorbing. So you might take omega-3, zinc, stuff like that. And they're the kind of things that can help when you have something like eczema, for example. And they do get a result, and it's definitely certainly worth it, because when you have something like that, you need to see, you come and see me and I say, okay, let's start working on the gut, and in 2 months things start to improve. By then they've given up and they're like, no, I went to see them and it didn't work. So you have to do something that makes people think, oh, cool, like, yeah, it already seems a little bit better. So you want that as well. Of course, you want the symptoms to go away. But often the reason that you need more zinc or omega-3s or whatever it might be is because you're not absorbing them properly, because your gut health is not great either. So sometimes it's intake also, if they're just not, there's not enough in the diet. But even if there is, the absorption's not happening properly, and therefore, there's that as well. So again, it's that underlying stuff that needs to be addressed. So even if it is nutrient deficiencies, and yes, you do want to use supplements, for example, at least temporarily to help with that, but it's still it's always like, why do you need more omega-3s? So are you not having them, or you are, but we're still having an issue? So what's that underlying stuff, so that in 6 months, a year, whatever it is, you're not still taking your zinc supplement. You no longer need it, because that underlying stuff is fixed and you get your nutrients from your food. I mean, obviously that's a whole nother topic that I know you are well aware of as well. There's not the nutrients in the soil, and all of that stuff too. So it's a whole nother problem. But yeah, you always want to be addressing that underlying stuff, and with kids, if all's going well, you should be able to sort of supplement with food supplements, if you know what I mean. So not necessarily synthetic, iron, B vitamins and all that sort of stuff. You can add some liver to their foods, or liver capsules, or vitamin C. They don't need to take a vitamin C tablet every day, so long as they've got vitamin C is pretty available in foods that kids like, berries and stuff like that. And then, if that's, if they're not getting enough, or their requirement is higher, you can use other little things like kakadu plum powder in their smoothie, or, little things like that, which is a bit more of a long-term sort of strategy. So you're not pumping everyone full of synthetic vitamins long-term, which is not really the way that I certainly use them for a purpose, but over the long term, food type supplementation is certainly like my preference for everyone, but for kids for sure. Because yeah, I mean, the supplements are great, but they're produced in a lab, and some are better than others and all that sort of stuff. You can do it with food. That's obviously a better option, in my opinion.
Yeah, our bodies have a better idea of what, like they know what it is when it comes from a food, more so than a supplement not surrounded by all the other like phytochemicals and things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the kind of reason around it. I mean, yeah, if you take an iron supplement, and there's certainly good and bad versions of that for sure, but it's iron, even a good one, it'd be iron bisglycinate or something. It's just iron. You don't get just iron in a food. It comes with all the other things that it needs to absorb into your body as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that's obviously a better option. Yeah. So again, I don't know what we were originally talking about.
But I love this. Like, it sounds like, I love that it's the root cause that you focus on, and that there's things that you do to help support symptoms and get that relief initially, to get that buy-in so people are motivated to
Yeah.
continue. And that is really important. But then you look at the long term and look at addressing what's underneath that. Is it the inflammation, or is it the dysbiosis in the gut, or the leaky gut lining? I think that those are at the root cause of so many of our issues, whether they're physical or mental health issues. That seems to be more and more what the research is showing, that that's what's what we really do need to address. And that's
Yeah.
what our lifestyle has been causing this inflammation and this dysbiosis and this leakiness. And yeah, it's a big thing, but if we can address that, we can get symptom relief. And in one area, maybe it's our skin, but then also realize that we're thinking more clearly as well, right? And we're digesting better and we have more energy. So it's the long-term fix is so helpful for like all aspects of our well-being, isn't it?
And it's, the benefit of doing it is immeasurable, because you can never know what you don't have because you did that. Does it make sense? But you know what I mean? Like, you can't even, because and it gets thrown around a lot, science-based and all that sort of stuff. And I 100%, I'm constantly reading different new studies and, nutrients that have been studied for different things and all that sort of stuff. I'm obviously not saying that that's not beneficial, but you can't study. It's impossible to study the complexity of, herbs, plants, prevention, all that. It's impossible to pick those pieces out and study the benefits of it and have it on a piece of paper. So I certainly, while I do use that as certainly the basis of a lot of the things I do, the way I think about it is not like that at all, in that is just so much to it that you can't possibly have on a piece of paper and prove to anybody, yes, that's why, or whatever. But I see it every single time. There's no, can I give you the exact reason why or whatever? No, not really, because you can't study that.
Yeah, you can't really do a randomized trial on all of these things and your whole lifestyle over how you've lived your life before and after. It's too complex. But people, when they make these changes, they experience it themselves, and they have that more knowing of, this is really helpful. And you see that in your clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so with your own kids, so with my own kids, I obviously, and again, like we do not eat perfectly. The kids still want to eat all the crap that all kids like to eat. And I don't ever stop, if we're out at a party or this or that, I don't ever say, no, you can't have this or that or anything, because I don't want, that's just not the way I see healthy living as being, even though obviously I'd prefer them to say, no, I don't eat lollies or whatever. But I also don't think that that's a long-term strategy to say, no, we're going to this party, don't have any of this or whatever. I mean, there's certainly things, we'll buy ice cream and, or whatever, and they'll have that. There's things that I don't buy. I mean, I would never buy them. I've never given them a soft drink or, anything like that. I mean, that's kind of, I feel like that's just, there's nothing in that your body wants, like there's just a few things where you just think, oh my God, there's just nothing. Mind you, so my oldest son is 7, nearly 8 now, but we went to a little function and there was a big esky full of soft drinks, and he'd never had so this was probably 6 months ago. He had never had a soft drink before, because I just never bought him a soft drink, and if we'd been somewhere, there's always been something else he can have, and, And I saw him, he was like, because now they're a bit older, they can just walk around, do their own thing. I saw him sitting next to the esky and he opened a can of soft drink and he was just drinking it. And like, it was just funny because like he's seen this opportunity, you know, like, oh my God, I'm just going to have a soft drink he'd never had before. But, you know, he had a few sips and he put it like there, you know, if you haven't had that before, it's very sweet and full on, you know, like he had a few sips and he put it down and ran off, you know. So I certainly don't freak out about any of that stuff. There's no point stressing about it. But I also definitely, so if I think talking about just generally, just always talking about your body's own ability, I think we've lost, just generally as a society, also lost the idea completely that we have any sort of like ability to look after ourselves almost, or our own health, you know, like you just buy a solution to your problem. And I think that's just like how people think now. So kids don't really have that kind of, you know, if my son, you know, a few times he'll be sitting on the toilet and he'll be saying, and my youngest son, I like it, I'm kind of hard to go to the toilet. Can you go get me a glass of water? Obviously he doesn't understand that water doesn't flush straight through and push out, you know, what he's currently doing. But he knows that. He knows that if you can't go to the toilet, okay, what have I been doing? Like he knows that you have responsibility for your own health. If you can't go to the toilet or, you know, something, whatever's happening, you have to do something about it. You don't necessarily the first solution isn't go and get a tablet or go and see someone about it. I can see that they sort of have, and I've tried to do that, make them think that what am I doing that I could change that is maybe causing this? And they'll do it in that. Obviously, they don't, like I say, they don't quite understand it. Like it's not just pipe, the water flushes through just immediately. But I love seeing that they do have that thought is in their head that you have responsibility for what's happening to you. So you can do something about it. What are you eating? My son actually, and this is the first time on the weekend, he had I didn't know what it was at first because there was a few, I thought he got bitten by something, but then I realized it was hives. So he's ended up with all these blotches all over his body. And, you know, hives, you know, maybe you came in contact. It's the first time it's happened. So maybe he's come in contact with something or whatever. But he also said at dinner, because there was ice cream in the fridge, and he said, oh, no, I might have some, you know, like he understands that if something's going wrong, maybe what you're eating is not. So he has that thought at 5, like has that kind of thought process that have I eaten something, like did I eat this, or did, you know, to actually think about it is important. And I don't think it's like the way it's done anymore. And I like seeing with clients, I see that happening when they're first, you know, kids have night terrors and, you know, different things like that. And no one ever knows why, you know, like, oh, I don't know why, I don't know when it happens, I don't, you know, I'm not sure. And once they've started to improve and, you know, oh no, they're not, yeah, they only had one since I last saw you, but we went to such and such and we had lollies and that night was the night that it happened. You know, people start to see that, yeah, okay, you can have lollies, but that's when this stuff is happening for you. So you get to choose that. You can choose. It's not just, things aren't just completely random. And I know it's hard for people because that's not the way it's, how would you work that out? You know, if you're on your own and you're not taught that, but as time goes, people can start to see that for themselves and then get to have more, you know, responsibility for how things are happening for them as well.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah. And that is something that even as adults, we will defer to experts or doctors or whoever it is, depending on the issue, for support. And that's important because we need some guidance. But having that autonomy over our bodies and understanding the impact of the things that we're doing, that we're eating, or the way we're living our life do impact us. And we have that choice to make those changes. They might be hard to make initially, but we
Yeah.
do have that power, and that can actually create really big changes. And I think that's so important that you're teaching your kids that. That's something that I try to work on with my kids too. And they notice, oh, they've got a sore tummy if we've gone to a birthday party and they ate cake, because
Yeah.
they're not used to eating that. And yeah, they, and initially I would talk to them about, oh, sometimes that can like make your tummy hurt. And then now they're noticing that or at least my 5-year-old is making that connection now. And it's really cool to see. And yeah, sometimes he gets it wrong, but he's starting to think about that. And that, yeah,
Yeah.
never,
And
yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to necessarily know exactly what's happening or anything, but I think that's a big thing that most people aren't even doing at all. So to be learning that early is, even right, whether they get it right or wrong, at least the thought is there, and obviously over time that will change. And it is hard, but like I've even noticed it as, with my 5-year-old, because we went somewhere, he had a milkshake, just like just a normal milkshake, sugary syrup and whatever, milk. And he was like, oh, I feel yuck, my tummy's so full, and I'm never having a milkshake again. Like, I never will I eat a milkshake again. And then we literally went to the shops that afternoon, and he said, can I have a milkshake? I said, you just said that you're never having a milkshake again. But I just thought, oh my gosh, that's how early it starts, in that, adults, say, oh, well, I know, I'm putting on weight, I'm not going to do this, I'm doing this, I'm not going to do this anymore. And, you're back straight away doing it again, whatever the habit is. And I just thought it was such an adult thing to do in such a small little body. I thought, oh gosh, like you, but it just reminded me, because you said it is hard. It is hard to do. But you at least are aware of it, and just do little things, like even if it's, even though I spent my, teens and 20s exactly this, diets and, whatever, detoxes and this and that, all these random things. But they're never a long-term solution ever. I've never seen a single client that's done any diet that has kept doing it ever, no matter what it is. So just small habits. It literally, if the amount of different things that people try to do, and, diets and things like that, and end up not doing them. I know we're talking about adults now, you should be talking about kids, but it's the small habits, if all you did was just drink more water. And even kids, how much water are you, that one thing, like how much water are they drinking? If I don't get my kids to do it, and if I don't say anything, they they could go a day without barely drinking any water, you know what I mean? And that alone will change their microbiome, their mood, so many things. So if the only thing you did to start with, you can't afford to go see someone, or you can't afford to buy new whatever, supplements and all this sort of stuff, just make sure that underlying stuff is, are they drinking plenty of good water each day? Like, that can change heaps of things, just that one thing, if they're not doing it. Yeah. So just even one thing at a time is and consistently is important.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And I love that that's kind of what you started with. And that's where we're ending on, is that it's that doing that one thing. And it can be a really small thing, like getting them to drink water. And that might seem small because it's doable, but it's actually going to be so important in the long term. And the same could be said for sleep and things like that, because that can affect their microbiome too, or making those small changes and being consistent with them. And then you can build on from there, because change is really hard. I'm a psychologist, and that's my job, is to help people make changes. And yours is very similar with making changes. And I myself, like, a struggle with making changes. It takes time, but you need to have that awareness of why it's important, and really know it is important, and start to feel confident in those choices and those changes. And if you can start with those doable things like drinking one more glass of water a day, or asking your child, do you want some water once a day? You start to get that confidence that, oh, I can make changes, and then you can build on from there. So I love that that's one of your suggestions. I think that's so doable. Based on like what we've been talking about here, are there,
sorry, yeah, keep going.
sorry, based on what we've been talking about here, is there anything, any books or resources that you would suggest that parents could look at?
Let me think. I actually don't know off the top of my head, because I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously most of the things that I'm reading are, you know, textbooks or, you know, research and stuff, which is not really something you recommend people to do so much. I'm trying to think of like something that people would enjoy reading. I actually can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, I can. Your website actually has some really good, your email list and your website have really useful resources on them. And they talk about like the gut and skin conditions and all sorts of things, zinc, all sorts of topics that are useful for adults and kids alike. But they're very digestible and they're very easy to read. So that is an excellent resource.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, you can't underestimate. So even though, and I do, like, I try to make things that I tell people are, you know, especially if they're email, Instagram or whatever, they're pretty simple, pretty short, and, you know, you can't go into all the detail. But just even talking about what we were saying with water and whatever, you know, you kind of just think of it, yeah, drink more water, it's good for your bowels, or, you know, it's just very simple the way we think about it. But the amount of things, so if you have stool building up in the bowel, you've got hormones in that stool that are reabsorbing through the gut wall into your body. You know, there's hormone receptors throughout the body that already have hormones attached. When those hormones reabsorbing then have nowhere to attach to, they're floating around causing symptoms for your kids. And, you know, there's so many complex reasons why something as simple as drinking water is so much more important than what people know, that what they realize, you know, because we kind of just look at it like, you know, just that, drink more water, it's good for your blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh yeah, sweet. Like, you know, and it doesn't seem, you know, it does, it's not put two and two together as in, you know, okay, drink more water, it's good for you. Oh yeah, but my kid has ADHD and eczema and something. So whatever, I need information about that. Like, you don't kind of put those, the complexity of what you're dealing with this kind of like simple, like drink more water, it's good for you, but the impact and all the reasons why, which we don't, you know, is kind of complex and don't always talk about, and all of that. Just that can help all of these conditions for so many reasons, because of hormones and microbiome and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's just kind of also like you as a health professional, you know that, and you know why that's so important, but that's obviously not usually transferred onto anyone else, so they don't realize exactly how important that is and how much that can make a difference. So you're looking for like, oh yeah, cool, but like, what supplement should I take? Oh yeah, but you know, what course can I do? Oh, who should I go see? You know, all of that. But you have so much more power to influence your health with that small little things you don't need to see anyone about. And it's understandable that people don't realize that, because they don't understand like the complexity necessarily of it, but you just have so much power to influence by just doing that stuff consistently, that people don't realize, you know, because our power has been completely taken away from us in so many ways when it comes to our health. I think we just think people generally just feel like, well, I don't know, they're just waiting for information about their health. But for so many reasons, like, that's a real systemic issue gosh, in so many different ways. It's a whole nother thing. But it's just not true. You have so much power to influence your own health by just get outside, like stand on the grass, sit in the sun, eat your lunch, kids eat your lunch, sitting on the grass in the sun, drink plenty of water every day. Like just those things. Yes, they might not change everything this week, but I tell you what, you do 3 of those things every single day for a year, you will have a different kid in a year. And you've spent no money. You've not, you know what I mean? Like you've not taken any supplements or whatever. It's hard because it's like a longer term change and you can't see things happen like that. But that's what matters like when it comes down to it. They're the main things that are going to help long term as well. You know?
I think that's just so important, isn't it? And I think, we grow up in the society that pushes this agenda of quick fixes or pills or tablets or whatever it is. And it is those simple things, those lifestyle shifts that are so doable that we each can do for free, like you say, that do make the difference long term. And that's just such an important message. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to let the listeners know before we sign off?
I mean, we've kind of covered everything, but that's, I guess, or we haven't covered everything. We could talk all day, but that's my underlying kind of, you know, it's all very complex, and you know, there's so many different things you can do, and so many. There's also not necessarily right or wrong. Like there is no best supplement. There is no best thing for a condition, you know, with your kids. Like it depends what you can handle. It depends what you can, on your current knowledge base. It depends what your lifestyle will allow you to do. You know, so there's no one answer for any of this stuff. But I feel like people aren't aware of how possible it is for their kids to feel well and healthy, and it is possible. That when you either find it yourself or work with someone who actually believes that as well, because generally people are working with someone who does not believe that. They tell you that this is how it is and there's nothing else you can do. Can you imagine how that makes people feel? How, you know, you think this is my perfect little child, and you're being told, sorry, you know, this is how it is. It makes people feel terrible, and it's just not true. There is so much you can do, and there is an answer or a solution for. I mean, I would struggle to think of it. Obviously, there's maybe a couple of exceptions, but for every single condition that your child might have, there is a solution for it. Sometimes it's harder to find, but it's people need to be able to believe that, because it is the case, and then find someone that also believes that can help you to find. If it's hard for you to find that solution, then you know there's people out there that can help you find it. But just not to feel that. I mean, I see it all the time, that kind of like, it's hard to explain, but whatever that feeling is that they've got from just being told that this is just how it is, and it's just so like disheartening and frustrating and all that sort of stuff, that they just like, oh, whatever, you know, we take our medication and this is us now, you know. It's just not the case. And it's just, I just find it's just so unfair that that's the way it is, and you know, people aren't aware of that there's so much they can do.
Yeah, that awareness and that empowerment is so important. And it's so amazing that you are helping parents to help themselves, people to help themselves, and parents to help their kids to shift that and realize that, no, there is a lot that we can do. And you don't have to accept that how things are now is how they're always going to be. There's so many ways we can improve whatever the symptoms or situation is. I love that. Where can people find out more about you, and if they want to work with you, like what are the best places?
So if you want to sort of follow along with, daily kind of things, then Instagram or Facebook page is where I just share kind of daily stuff, little things, tips, meals that I make, and all that. There's some resources on my website, like blogs and stuff like that. And I send out emails every couple of weeks. And obviously there is where you can book appointments and all of that as well. But yeah, I certainly try to, on Instagram and Facebook and on my website in general, I try to share, because not everyone can make an appointment, obviously, or even needs to necessarily. But I still always try to share little, just things that you can implement easily yourself, or just little ideas to make, feeding your kids easier and all that, because I know that can be just a pain in the butt in itself sometimes. So Instagram, website, and that's obviously where you can book appointments and stuff too, either here, in Brisbane, or online as well.
Okay, so you do online and in-person consults.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and all this information. That's just incredible. And I think this message was such an important one for all people and all parents, especially to hear. So thank you so much.
No problems. Thanks for having me.